Welcome to the ParentU podcast, where we want to frame the challenges of the teenage years for parents to see these years as a great work of sanctification in their lives and have a deeper understanding of each other and, most importantly, grow together in the grace of Jesus Christ. I'm Mark Long, and 5 years ago, I approached the leadership at Oak Mountain Presbyterian Church in Birmingham, Alabama, about a calling to pursue the hearts of parents and families with teenagers and to equip them to be proactive rather than reactive in their parenting. Choices. A teenager's day is full of them. Some seemingly small, some big, but they all can change the trajectory of their lives. Raise your hand if you've ever been surprised by a choice, right or wrong, that your child has made for themselves. Now keep it raised if you are proud of the way that you responded to that choice. Have you then thought of what conversations that you had that may be influenced or failed to influence that choice? If you feel convicted, remember these 4 things. You are loved. You have great value. You have good future. And we're not perfect. These are 4 biblical truths that today's guest wants to remind us of so that we can share them with our teenagers. Our guest today is Steve Ward, founder of STEPS Ministries. And Steve, I want to say thank you for coming and welcome to the ParentU podcast.
It is my pleasure, Mark. I'm glad to be here.
Good. If you could just give us a few minutes of just explaining a little bit about you and your vision and how you got here.
Well, God's very creative in how he allows our life experiences to shape the calling he has for us. So I graduated from Georgia Tech. I started work with IBM. I wound up being with IBM for 38 years. What most people don't know is that for a good number of those years, I was also a high-functioning alcoholic. And our family actually went into a period of time that I refer back to as the dark ages. Substance abuse and related mental health issues are like a tornado that tear through a family, and they affect everyone, and they surely did for us. So times were tough, and God seemed far away, which meant we had to pray even harder than ever. But I was exposed to recovery in lots of different ways through that period, for myself, as a spouse, as a dad. And over a period of time, I felt called to move toward ministry. So I did. 5.5 years ago, I left IBM after 38 years and founded STEPS Ministries.
It really has been a privilege to walk alongside you as you develop this ministry and watch it expand and grow. And I know that you've been very influential in my life as I pursue the ParentU stuff here at Oak Mountain Presbyterian Church. So I'm thankful for that. Our teenagers today face similar but different challenges to what their parents faced growing up. There is likely a lot of wisdom from past experiences, what to do and what not to do from parents. But connecting with our kids is one of the most difficult things. We both know that connecting with our kids through conversations is the most surefire way to understand what is going on in their lives. But there are so many roadblocks that make that a challenge. In your experience, what can parents do to break through that?
Well, the first thought is the concept of being proactive. And on one hand, I want to encourage parents to get started as early as possible, but also understand that they have grace, that wherever their kids are as they're growing up now, it's okay. You can make adjustments now. But ideally, to have these right conversations early, even before elementary school and certainly during elementary school, and get ahead of problems before they manifest themselves in your kids. And so what I would suggest is that parents think about it more broadly than just talking to their kids. How do they get ready and be prepared and involved with them in part of their lives? And that's where PACES for Parents came about. PACES is an acronym. The P stands for preparation. Let's say as your kids are going toward the teenage years, get ready for that. Understand what it's going to be like. Have the right expectations. Understand that they're going to be looking to you as an example. And for you to get your own act together so that you can be the best parent you can be is important. So be prepared. That's what the P in PACES is all about. The A is for awareness. Have an understanding of their world. You're naive if you think they're not going to see temptations and risks because they are. But also understand their world as they see it. If they act anxious or sad, don't blow it off like it's insignificant. It's very significant. So the A in PACES is for awareness. The C is for connection. To connect to them deeply and try to get them to share their heart with you and get them to connect with you and even to be willing to connect to other people and other resources. And most importantly, to form their own personal relationship with God so they're connected in that way. The E in PACES is for education. Your kids are going to be going through things they've never faced before. So you're going to be parenting situations you've never encountered before. So you might need to learn what do you do in some of these tricky situations. And then finally, the S in PACES is for STEPS. Have a plan so that you can thoughtfully prepare what are the steps that you should be taking rather than just reacting emotionally in the moment. Because very often the decisions we make emotionally in the moment come from the wrong place, and we can make a lot of mistakes. So that's what PACES for Parents is all about, and that's how people can be proactive and really engage with their kids.
You know, Steve, a lot of times parents want to connect with their kids, but when you think about a connection, it goes both ways. They want to hear from their kids and they want to connect with their kids, but sometimes they fail to be a connection or a connecting point for them because they're not sharing their hearts. And I know we've got to be parents, right? Parents have got to be parents, and we want parents to parent. But a lot of times they miss the opportunity because they're not being vulnerable with their own kids. They're not just displaying some of these things that they're wanting from their own kids. And so, you know, what happens is our kids tend to be a mirror of us. And we wonder why that is. When we respond negatively to their choices, how does that affect our relationship? I know that's one of my greatest failures, is how I responded to their failures. So what should parents keep in mind when engaging with their kids, or how can a parent reinforce healthy choices? You said be proactive. Well, here it is. How can you give us a couple of points there?
I sure can. And the advice you just gave is well sounded. I mean, communication is a two-way street. So parents need to know, A, they communicate by example, they communicate through expression and tone, and every word that they say it's not a coincidence that we are advised often in the Bible to control our own tongue. The things that we say can be very hurtful. Also, parents generally are much worse listeners than they need to be. They need to listen and listen some more, and listen for understanding, and listen with empathy, and listen with love. So everything you just said was true. As we talk about connecting with our kids at a deeper level, that's what led us to an article I wrote once called "What Every Teenager Needs to Hear." And we talk about four things in that one. And the first, you had mentioned earlier when you mentioned these biblical truths, Mark. The first section of this is the things that every teenager needs to hear. So if you only say a few things to your kids, please tell them that you are loved, that you have value exactly the way you are, the way you're designed, that you have a positive future, and that we're grown-ups and we're not perfect, and you don't have to be perfect either. Those little core messages are incredibly important. There's a point in my life, or in my son's life, where he was really struggling. And it hit me that I wanted to give him my blessing. So I studied what the Bible defines as a blessing. Guess what? It defines it as conveying value and a positive future. So the first part about what every teenager needs to hear are those four truths that you talked about earlier. The second goes along with it. Is to understand that it's okay not to be okay sometimes. And parents, if you're listening, I beg you to listen to these two things. The number of teenagers who contemplate suicide these days is 19% of teenagers. And others struggle with a lot of instances of drugs or alcohol. And in many cases, it may just be insecurity or anxiety. The reason they struggle is because your kids don't believe these truths. So it's okay not to be okay sometimes. They need to know that if they're sad or anxious or insecure or feel left out or don't know their place in their group, that's normal. That doesn't make them broken. They're not broken, and they're not alone. All of their friends have problems too. They're just not talking about it. And what they're sharing on social media is not reality. Social media is an artificial representation of the best parts of our lives. And we're trying to show people how great we have it going on. That's not reality. So your kids need to know that it's okay not to be okay. They're not broken, They're not alone. And you need to be a safe person that they can talk to, someone that they can trust, someone that won't judge, someone that will walk them through that dark space. And they also need to know it's totally okay for them to talk to somebody else if they need to. It's like if they broke their arm, they would go see a doctor. That would be very natural. If they have a problem with their teeth, they would go see a dentist. If they feel sad or left out or anxious, it's okay for them to talk to a pastor or a counselor. We hope that they're going to talk to us as parents, but they need to know that's very, very normal for them to want to talk to others. And mostly that they always know that they can talk to God. Their best friend and their best counselor is only a prayer away.
All that sounds very good and it's applicable. But when it comes to kids at that point in time to make a healthy choice, how can parents reinforce them making better choices, healthy choices?
Well, balanced parenting includes both grace and truth. And so in the article in the material on what every teenager needs to hear, the third section was that kids and especially teenagers need to know they are responsible for their choices. You're just teaching them what real life is going to be about. And if you enable them to not face the natural consequences of their negative choices, you're crippling them rather than equipping them for real life. So being responsible for their choices includes you setting healthy boundaries. Do it thoughtfully ahead of time, not in the spur of the moment. Communicate it very clearly so that they know if they do X, their consequence will be Y. And just let it be that it's their choices that are leading to the consequences. So that should be a calm discussion. Whenever you administer consequences, they made the decision to step over the boundary. So this being responsible for the choices involves boundaries. It involves their personal responsibility. If they only learn a few things, that's a pretty important one. But then it also needs to know you understand that they're going to make mistakes because they're human beings, that you make mistakes, we all do. And let them know that whatever they do, you'll forgive them. The first thing you want to do is if they start making mistakes and going down the wrong road, you really want to know about it early. So you would love it for them to come tell you that they've started vaping or smoking cigarettes or that they've smoked weed. Parents freak out when that happens, but you should see that as a blessing and an opportunity that you now have the ability, A, to forgive them and connect with them, thank them for their honesty. And so also you're urging them to learn how to make good choices. So that's what being responsible for your choices is. And finally, there's something that all teenagers need to understand these days because it's so true, is choices can be very dangerous these days. Even teenagers are willing to listen to the facts about things like drugs and alcohol. They don't want to be preached at or lectured at, and they don't want to hear someone who doesn't know what they're talking about telling them how dangerous something is while they're doing substances themselves, right? So we have to be real, and we have to know what we're talking about. But parents don't have to be experts on drugs and alcohol. They really don't. But they need to talk about them.
Okay, so Steve, we have a family. Moms and dads are dealing with a child who has made very, very poor decisions, very unhealthy decisions. And these choices now have some negative impacts happening in their own lives and also with their families. How can parents best support a child in those situations?
The first message I would say is be there for them. It's easy to remember, be there. But what does that mean? It means be available. That means you're not too busy, you're not distracted, you're not unaware, you're going to be there for them. The other is be supportive. Your first step should be toward them in love, not toward them with your voice raised or threatening them in some way. You need to be safe. They need to know that they can share things with you. You need to be empathetic to try to understand what they're going through, not just your own emotions. Try to help them deal with the crisis that they're facing. You need to be open and be vulnerable. It's okay for you to let your kids know that you've made mistakes sometimes. They may learn from that example. So the first thing is just to be there for them. That's what you can do in the moment. And then STEPS has a lot of other resources that can help parents get ready ahead of time.
Well, I want to say thank you for being with us today in this simple little podcast. Our desire really is to be an encouragement to parents while also having equipping things in mind. And I think today was a great equipping day for parents. Also, thank you for your heart. You started in a position of humility about your own life, and then we can see now what God has done and is doing in your life since he decided to work in your life about these things. You can really see the pursuit of God in your life, and I appreciate that. I want parents to know that as well, that having teenagers is not the time for parents to stop parenting. I want parents to see that this is God's pursuit in their lives via their teenagers. And even when it becomes tough and even when it becomes difficult, God has not stopped pursuing them. So thank you very much. ParentU is a ministry of Oak Mountain Presbyterian Church. I'm Pastor Mark Long, and thanks for listening.